got 3 words for you. You like that?
But what we need to do is, once we get away from the wall, we got to keep swinging and now move out further. So, we find ourselves in a similar position now. And the reality is that so does our opponent. They're just the same in terms of their, need to win this game. So it's going to make for a great, NFC North matchup against two teams with great players.
Do we know what happened?
Maybe the headphones fell off. I'm not sure. That's pretty hilarious, though.
Kirk on a Zoom. That'd be. I'd watch that every week.
So
he
dropped.
He
dropped the headphones. Sometimes he drops the football. I get it.
Yeah. So, gentlemen, this is the weekly State of Kirk Cousins episode of Purple Daily. I'm Phil Mackey, Judd Zulgad, Declan Goff, and State of Kirk Cousins, always powered by Corona Hard Seltzer Spiked Sparkling Water. A few things to get to on this particular episode of the State of Kirk Cousins, but I think the headline question and everything that we talk about here, and this applies somewhat to this season, but mostly like if they keep going with Kirk Cousins next year, the year after, is can the Vikings win a Super Bowl on the path that they're on with Kirk Cousins? Because that's all we really care about on this show. We want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. That's our mission statement here. Can the Vikings win a Super Bowl on the path that they're on, which is, like, in theory, regardless of what happens, let's say they run the table, they get to the playoffs, they win a game. I think this is all sort of building toward 2021, where you get Danielle Hunter back in a perfect world, Michael Pierce comes back, you get some draft picks, and you go forward on the path that you're on, and it's better because your defense will be better. Can they win a Super Bowl on the path that they're on? I've got some data points I want to bring, but when I ask that question, what is your initial response, Judd?
With the current construction of things and then some tweaks here and there with people coming back, but Kirk Cousins is still your quarterback at his current contract. Beyond becoming extremely fortunate, my answer is no, because I don't think the recipe is correct. I don't think that you can pay as much as the Vikings pay at certain skill position to certain skill position players, but value defense as much as they do. But then you can't afford to pay all of those guys what they probably should make, given what they're asked to do. So, no, my answer is the construction to me seems the pieces of the puzzle seem to be off. I don't think they can.
So I'm a little bit more closer to yes than you are, because I think if you get a few things perfect,
that's the problem.
The answer can be yes. Like if you believe that a defense, it depends on what you look at. I mean, Football Outsiders has the Vikings defense, according to DVOA, as like a fringe top 10 defense this year. A lot of other metrics, yards per play, Pro Football Focus, they're more on the bottom 10 of the NFL. But I think it'd have to start with, if you bring back Danielle Hunter, and he's the Danielle Hunter of old, and you bring in Michael Pierce, and it just makes that an awesome defensive line again. And you use your draft picks wisely, and maybe, let's say, 2 rookies make a huge impact, one on the offensive line and then one somewhere else, maybe another interior defensive lineman or something, and they make immediate impacts. Are those things enough? And I guess you could include, if you cut a couple of players and free up some cap space, is there an impact free agent you could sign? Like, these are all options. Are those things enough to win a Super Bowl? I think those things are enough to get you back into the playoffs and back into the division mix, but I still don't see the Vikings as a top tier team with those tweaks going into next year, in part because of the things that Kirk can't do compared to some of the other quarterbacks that are in that collection of top tier teams. I think you can say Kirk Cousins is playing really, really well and probably close to the peak of his capabilities over the past 2 months. You can say that over here. And then on the other side, you can say, but a lot of the other quarterbacks that have come into the NFL in the last 4 years have skill sets and can do things that Kirk Cousins cannot.
Well, and let's broaden the scope of the question out. The question out to ask this question, which is, can you put together an offense around Kirk Cousins that can make him as successful as possible? And I don't mean statistically. I mean to win games and potentially playoff games and a Super Bowl. And my feeling is, if the answer is going to be yes, I need to immediately spend a ton on my line. The line has to hold up. Like, it can't have problems in pass protection. It can have 1 or 2 bad plays per game, but you need that line to be, both when it comes to run protection and pass protection, to be damn good, right? Mm-hmm. I now need a coaching staff and an offensive coordinator who is willing, good or bad, to allow Kirk to turn things loose. He's got to cut things loose, right? So I'm now eliminating the 8-minute plus third quarter drive, and I'm turning that into what, Phil? 2.5? Like, I'm going down the field quickly now. And so beyond Kirk and like blaming Kirk, I say, how can I best feature Kirk? And then I say, are the Vikings doing that? And my response is no, they're not. Like, he puts up great stats, but if I'm going to throw caution to the wind and say this team is now going to be built around what Kirk can do, and if my defense is okay, that's fine. But I'm going to score quickly. I'm going to be efficient. And Thielen, Jefferson, and Cook are absolutely going to be just stars. And they are going to be quick strike stars. And we are going to be as close as we can possibly come to the greatest show on turf 2. How do we get there? They're not anywhere close to being willing from a coaching standpoint and an offensive standpoint to do that.
Yeah. And so the way I sort of view it, and where I put Kirk in this discussion is I think there are 3 types of quarterbacks in the NFL, just like broad buckets of quarterbacks. Bucket number 1, and we are very familiar with this in Minnesota, is quarterbacks who actively bring the team down on a week-to-week basis.
I know what you're talking about.
Christian Ponder was just like he was sabotaging the team at every corner, right? The Vikings have had other guys who stepped in, like Gus Frerotte sometimes was just not good enough.
They had a lot of guys like that.
Jackson was not good enough.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold has probably fallen into this category now. Mitch Trubisky largely has been in this category
till Sunday. Till Sunday.
Yeah. Oh my God.
When Mitch comes here and lights them up, baby.
So there's guys who bring the team down at that position. Category number 2 for me is guys who play to the level of the team around them. Like, they're good quarterbacks. They're playing to the level of the team around them. You know, Matt Ryan has mostly been in this category where, man, if you put pieces around Matt Ryan, they could be a Super Bowl team. If you've got a defense and coaching and the weapons are great and Julio Jones, et cetera, right? And a couple good scat backs out of the backfield. But if you take some of those weapons away, the Falcons could be 4-12.
Right.
And it just kind of depends on what's around him. So that's category number 2. And then category number 3 are quarterbacks who elevate the team around them. Dynamic playmakers with their arms or their legs or both. Guys who regularly overcome things where, like, regardless of your roster, your floor is 7-9 because that guy is so good. I mean, Drew Brees with his arm has been that for the better part of his career. Tom Brady with his everything, with his leadership, right? Guys who elevate. And then there's mobile guys. I think Lamar Jackson, he's like 26-7 as a starter. He hasn't proven it in the playoffs yet, but where your floor is not 4-12, like it might be with a Matt Ryan, your floor is much higher. So guys who bring the team down, guys who are could be really good, but also just play to the level of the team around them, and then guys who elevate. Mm-hmm. Realistically, Kirk falls into category number 2. I think some people might say, like, there's probably 5% or 10% that might say that he falls into category 1 or 3, depending on how much you hate him or how much you drink the Kool-Aid.
Sure. But
realistically, he's in category number 2, which is if the Vikings weren't so great at roster building and having stars at different positions, there's half a chance that a Kirk Cousins led team, much like the Falcons at times, could go like 5-11 or something. But if you can get the pieces perfect around him, he rises up with the team and they could go on and win Super Bowl. The hard part is when you have a category 2 quarterback, it's financially harder to build the rest of your team because that guy probably makes $25, $30, $40 million. Like Kirk makes $30 million, right? $20 million cap it this year. Mm-hmm. And you have to be flawless in your drafting and your free agent signings to build that team around that tier 2 quarterback. Mm-hmm. Those category 2 quarterbacks have won the Super Bowl before. But you look and it's like Hall of Fame pass rush, amazing offensive line, top 3 defense. It's all these things that they need to prop that quarterback up. And is that a fair assessment?
Yes, absolutely. And Kirk is a category 2. And I think that you also, if you're going to have that type of quarterback, your spending has to be done probably around him. So your left tackle can't be good. He's got to be damn good. And your line has to be stout. I mean, they can't.
You can't have Dakota Dozier, dude.
Yes, yes. Who against Tampa Bay, Dakota actually threw Kirk down at one point because he's like, you're going to be sacked, so I might as well throw you to the ground. And it made no sense.
It's like you thought there was a grenade, like, Kirk, oh my God.
And you got like half a sack, I think. So, yes, I think that's absolutely correct. And I do think that Kirk might have the opportunity to thrive even into the playoffs if he has the right coaching staff and the right scheme around him. Back to your question, though. Do the Vikings, as they currently operate, have the ability to win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins as their quarterback? My answer is no, but I'm not dumping on Kirk here. I'm saying that we have learned now in year 3 of Kirk that with how Zim and his staff want to do things, this is just not a great fit.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not. The money that you spend is spent in the wrong places.
Yeah, like the fact that right now, look at their construction right now. So this year they have a little bit of a Kirk cap reprieve that they created in the offseason. So he's only like $21 million to the cap this year. And they're going to have to figure out the next 2 years because that thing goes up and then up again if they don't restructure or trade or whatever. But why are you paying 2 safeties a combined $22 million to the cap? Why is Anthony Barr your second highest paid player basically?
Because
that's not the way.
Coach liked him.
That's
why.
You've got a great tight end potentially in Irv Smith Jr. and what we found to be a capable tight end in Tyler Conklin, yet you're paying Kyle Rudolph like whatever it is to the cap.
Yep.
So they're just sort of wasting money in a salary cap league. And those things can work. Like you can have subpar areas if you have that level 3 or that category 3 quarterback that elevates the team. And I just one more note on Kirk in that regard, because there are people, and I did post a poll on my Twitter account a couple days ago. Where do you think Kirk ranks on? Is he a top 5 guy? Is he top 10? Is he average-ish? And there are still a lot of people that think he's a top 5 and solidly like top 10 quarterback, a guy who elevates the team around him. And I would just say to those people, if he was really an elevator type quarterback, his teams over 6 years as a starter would be better than 500. Like there would be a deep playoff run in there. There'd be like a 13-3 season in there. So either he has just absolute garbage all around him, and he is elevating what should be 4-12 to 8-8 and 9-7, which I find hard to believe on the Vikings. The Vikings have a good roster, or I'm missing something else. So I that's where I can't have a conversation with people who think he's like an elevator top 5 quarterback when the evidence in front of my eyes for 6 years says no. They're like all these teams are 500. Are they terrible rosters and he's bringing them to 500? No. So that's my pet peeve.
In Sunday's loss to the Bucs, Kirk Cousins, and this is the problem, as much as you might like him, was not given the opportunity to elevate his team because of how they run their offense. So we don't even know. Like if you were to you would have to take Kirk for about 2 months and turn him loose. Keep in mind, the Vikings won 1 of their first 6 games, right? Bye week hits. They come back. In the first 2 games back, which they beat the Packers and Detroit, Kirk Cousins in those 2 games averaged 17 passes per game. We don't know. And the problem is you're paying him huge money to not know. So like we can't even answer the question. You would have to on Sunday basically say, bleep it. Let's find out.
Yeah.
So Kirk, you've got Thielen and Jefferson and potential, at least threat of play action to Cook. Go do it. And Dalvin, you're going to carry the ball 20 times.
Or less.
Right. But that would be, but because of how this team is built, we don't know. So if Kirk plays bad, we can see that. But they literally came out of the bye with a plan to not let Kirk beat them. And then Kirk started to improve. But on Sunday, you can't have an 8-minute third quarter scoring drive and tell me that you know a thing about the quarterback as far as can he do it?
What do you think would happen if
it was a training?
Because the Vikings have like the 5th fewest passes in the NFL this year, which is the way Mike Zimmer wants it.
Yep.
What if you freed Kirk Cousins? Like what if they went?
That's what I'm saying.
What if they became like a top 5 pass heavy offense? What do you think would happen? Do you think Kirk would flourish and he would all of a sudden become like Phillip Rivers in his prime, Tony Romo in his prime?
I think at 1-5, Phil Mackey, you had a great chance to find out.
But their response was, let's take it back here. He'll throw 14 times out of the bye.
Yes,
right?
Yes. They said he's thrown 10 picks. Let's fix this.
Yeah.
I said, no, you're paying him too much. Let's just find out.
Yeah.
Once and for all, you could have just found out, but we don't know.
Yeah. I also feel like there's something weird about, there's almost like a protective shell around Cousins with a lot of people too. Like he's 4-17 against winning teams as Vikings quarterback. So 4-17 against teams that finished the season with a winning record in the 3 years as Vikings quarterback. And I feel like so many people are in a rush to just say, well, it's not his, like the defense, and they point to all the other things.
Right.
And this is what's tough. It's like, yes, the defense is as bad as it's been this season under Mike Zimmer, and the offensive line has at least two spots, those guard spots that you got to figure out. Well, in Ezra Cleveland, you think I don't know if he's going to stay at guard, but like he might be a player. But if all the other things aren't perfect, like it's almost like you got to criticize all these other things until they're perfect, and then you can start to criticize Kirk Cousins. And what I'm saying here, back to the initial question off the top of this, is can Vikings win a Super Bowl on the path that they're currently on? I think it's a pie-in-the-sky pipe dream if you think that you can get the rest of the roster perfect. It's not like it happens once in a blue moon in the NFL where it's like, wow, the 2007 Patriots literally have a perfect roster, and then they got beat in the Super Bowl, and they won every single game. Like, it just doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Can you rise above an imperfect roster? And the answer to that question depends on who your quarterback is. And that's why we keep going back to this spot.
And in Zim's world, it depends on who his defense is, which can't be near as perfect as he wants because of what the quarterback makes, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, the question comes down to this. If you walked into Zim's office in March and said, Mike, Danielle Hunter wants to be the highest paid defensive end in the league. And by the way, he's recovered. He's going to be fine. But there's a problem here. We can't pay him like a quarterback and pay the quarterback what he makes. Which one do you want to keep? His answer in a heartbeat is Hunter.
And you know what? My answer is also Hunter.
Okay. But that's what I'm saying is I'm trying to explain that this is nobody's fault as far as so-and-so stinks. This is the fault of how your GM and coach have come to different conclusions on what they value.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into another data point that I think is relevant in this conversation. Super Bowl winning quarterbacks going back to the year 2000. All right. And I initially found this research, I believe, through Bleacher Report, did some studies on this. So back to the year 2000. So we're talking about basically the Tom Brady and Peyton Manning quarterback renaissance era, where quarterback play, because of the rules and because of the way the NFL has shifted, quarterback play drives winning more than anything in any other era in the last 20 years. So of the last 20 years worth of Super Bowl quarterbacks, 35% of them were on rookie scale contracts. Now, they weren't necessarily rookies, but they were on the first 5 years, usually, is it? And they did change draft contracts like 10 years ago. But 35% of Super Bowl winning quarterbacks are on rookie scale contracts, which allows you to build out the rest of your roster. We're talking about Tom Brady in the early 2000s, Ben Roethlisberger in 2005. Joe Flacco was on a rookie scale contract in 2012. Russell Wilson. And then Pat Mahomes last year was on a rookie scale contract as well. Carson Wentz in 2017 was the starter for most of the season for Philadelphia. He was on a rookie scale contract. Then Nick Foles came in, who didn't make much money either. So let that sink in for just a second. 35%, more than 1 in 3 quarterbacks who've won the Super Bowl since 2000 were on rookie scale contracts. That's pretty interesting to me. Mm-hmm. All right, what about the rest? Another 55%, which takes us up to 90% of the total pie, if we're doing a pie chart here, were Hall of Fame quarterbacks on non-rookie contracts. So if you have to pay a guy at that position and you want to win the Super Bowl, 55% are either going to be in the Hall of Fame or already are. Brady, Manning, Breeze, Ben, Rodgers, Kurt Warner, if you want to go back to 1999 and the greatest show on turf. So that leaves 10% of the last 20 years of Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. 10% weren't on rookie scale contracts and weren't Hall of Famers. We're talking about like the Brad Johnson 2002.
Dilfer?
Dilfer in 2000, and then
Great defenses.
Eli Manning, I'm not putting as a Hall of Fame quarterback, and he got paid before the 2011 season, so he's in that category. And so that's it. So this is where, like, you guys are so hard on Kirk. Listen, again, Super Bowl is the goal here. The easiest way to win a Super Bowl in 2020 era football is to have a really good quarterback on a rookie scale contract, or have a Hall of Fame quarterback making any amount of money. And if you're not on one of those paths, like the Vikings aren't on one of those paths with Kirk Cousins making the money that he's making right now.
Right.
You need to be 2002 Buccaneers defense good, or 2011 Giants pass rush good. There's really no other way to do it. Like, you have to be perfect in some of these other areas to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So
and Zimmer's best shot, as far as his theory on how you can win a Super Bowl, is what? 2017. Bradford hurt. Keenum plays. Like, that's his. That
was it. That was it.
That to him is the Monet of football, because it starts with defense.
Yeah.
Right. And I just don't know it's possible. But I think, just for the sake of clarity from here on out in talking about Kirk, and this is not absolving Kirk for on the field, but Kirk in some ways was just adopted by the wrong family. Like, his football family, it's the wrong family. Kirk needs to be in a, we're going to find out. We're going to empower you, Kirk. Like, today we're empowering you, and you might fail. We don't know, but we're going to give you that shot, because if you don't, this could really work out well. Yeah. The Vikings, with the way that they are run, are never going to do that. It's that simple. And so when you basically, Phil, go into a bye week with a guy who's paid and should be valued as much as Kirk, and say, how can we fix the problems? I know. Yes, Gary. Let's have our quarterback average 17 pass attempts per game for 2 games, which is a lot of football. And you're like, oh, that's great. Okay. Like, that's never going to empower him to find out the answer. But I do think that it is a destructive way if your goal is, as this show talks about, a Super Bowl championship.
Yeah, I love where you're going with this, in that, because it might sound crazy. Well, if you free Kirk Cousins, if you hashtag let Kirk sing, as Declan likes to say, if you say, listen, this offense is going to be built around you, man. Like, we're going to throw the ball, and we're going to let you use your weapons, and we're going to feature Justin Jefferson. He's going to get 50 more targets in a season than he is with our current style. And you're going to be the catalyst, Kirk. You're going to be the Peyton Manning. You're going to be the Aaron Rodgers. Like, we're going to make that happen.
Find out.
When I hear that, I'm like, he's talented, but he's not that type of a guy. Okay. Right. But if you're going to pay him a lot of money, and you're going to look to elevate him, if you think he's super talented, if you think he's got, top 5 arm talent, deep throws, accuracy in the NFL, and you could make a case that he has that. And there's some other things that are lacking: mobility, awareness, leadership, and some of those things. But if you really believe in him as a fan or as the Vikings, why are you putting together this offensive system that limits what he's doing? Why are you limiting him?
Because you don't trust him. But
in pass attempts,
you're right.
Right? So if you don't trust him, then why would you agree to pay him a bunch of money when you could just get somebody else in here that makes a lot less money? Go get Ryan Fitzpatrick for a year. Pay him a lot less money, and let him hand off to Dalvin and throw some balls down the field, right? There's such a weird disconnect. If you believe in Cousins, and if you think has a potential to be great and lead a team to a Super Bowl, then let him do that, and scheme for that, and draft for that, and allocate your resources into the offensive line for that, because you need the offensive line to make sure he's not getting pressured 50 times like in the game against Tampa this last weekend.
Correct.
So it's just, I don't know, like, if you did that, I don't think he would just like emerge into Peyton Manning, because I think
it might blow out, but you find out then.
Yeah.
But you did have a chance at 1-5. You had a really good chance to find out. Like, you should have just said, here are the keys to the car. So far, it's been bad. It's been rocky. Let's see. And instead, and this is the thing that's going to drive us crazy. Instead, you basically said, no. I can figure out ways to win games and get us back in the playoff picture, but we're going to be a fringe playoff team, possibly. So, like, we're not that. What's maddening is the 2020 Vikings, Phil, are not answering any questions. Like, there's no questions that we can now definitively say, because 21 should be decent. And instead of saying, okay, we know exactly where things stand, they're constantly taking Elmer's glue and duct tape and old nails and putting things back together, but it doesn't answer the question of, is the house going to hold up now? We don't know.
This might sound nuts, but I almost feel like the Chargers, the Chargers,
To the carpet.
Get your toys, bring them to the carpet. Who is your daddy and what does he do? I feel like action movie rewind coming out tomorrow on Mackey and Judd Kindergarten Cop. If you want some Arnold action.
Arnold Chargers.
I feel like the Chargers, who are nowhere near the playoffs, have answered more important questions about their direction the next 3 years than the Vikings have. Because at least they know.
And their coach is gone, probably.
We got some train wreckery on defense, and we need some pieces on offense.
But we got a quarterback.
We need a coach, but we've got a 10-year quarterback that doesn't make any money for the next 5 years, right?
Yeah,
so
I'm with you.
It's a weird spot because it's not a train wreck spot that the Vikings are in. It's not. Like, they're competitive, and they're going to be even better next year. And if you're happy with them just being better next year and going 10-6, or maybe even going 11-5 or something, that's great. But I don't think this car is. At some point, you either have to build around your quarterback, or you have to find a quarterback that doesn't make as much money so you can build the rest of your team. That's kind of where I'm at.
And find out. And that's why I think the regret is only going to grow, probably both internally and externally, about the fact that they didn't go with Stefanski.
Man, he's just doing such a great job.
And he would have found out. Like, he would have found out. Kirk, good or bad? Can we do this or not? And I just don't know that in the league right now, that trying to build things around your defense, I don't know that it works. Like, it can work for games for sure, but I don't know that it works as a philosophy.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yeah, 2017 was the year for that blueprint. One more thing on the rookie scale contract thing, because I think in a lot of the discussions, whether it's in the YouTube comment section for Purple Daily or on social media, when I bring up the rookie scale contract thing, the retort I get back from people who disagree is, well, you're not guaranteed anything. Like, the Vikings drafted Christian Ponder. He was on a rookie scale contract. Doesn't guarantee anything.
Sure.
Well, no, we're not. But we're not looking for guarantees here. There is one Super Bowl winner every single year. We're looking for maximizing your chances to win a Super Bowl, right?
Right.
And it's funny because when people bring up the Christian Ponder example, what if you draft another Christian Ponder? Christian Ponder has taken the Vikings basically just as far as Kirk Cousins. Or I should say the team has gone basically just as far with Christian Ponder, 10-6 division title, playoffs, but out. They didn't win a playoff game with him, but Kirk Cousins, 9-7, 10-6, division title. They won a game in the playoffs.
Right.
And the reason why isn't I am not comparing Christian Ponder to Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is miles better than Christian Ponder.
Right.
But because Christian Ponder didn't make any money on a rookie scale contract, the Vikings had a ridiculous offensive line. They could pay Adrian Peterson more money to keep him around in his prime, and they could add a couple pieces on defense and keep a couple pieces on defense that they otherwise wouldn't have. Because the cap is a myth to some extent, but it's not a full-on myth. At some point, you have to have room to pay players. And so that 35% of Super Bowl winning quarterbacks who have been on rookie contracts, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to win a Super Bowl if you have a quarterback on a rookie scale contract. But I think it guarantees that if you have a quarterback on a rookie scale contract, you can build your roster out. And the Vikings have shown they're pretty good at doing that. So,
unfortunately, my brain is about to blow up partially because of this, though. So I keep coming back to this. Zimmer needs, when it comes to kickers and quarterbacks, he probably needs a veteran who can withstand being critiqued constantly. So I come back to, ideally, with the way that Mike coaches, Phil, he would have a rookie scale quarterback so he could build out his defense entirely the way that he wants. But then I come back to, philosophically, I think he might ruin the kid because I don't think that he can mentally withstand basically putting on the kid gloves with a quarterback who's going to obviously make some mistakes. So this is where I just come back to, he's not a bad coach, but is he the right coach at all? Because, ideally I want a Stefanski, right? Like a patient, younger coach, gets his QB, builds with that guy. Doesn't dismiss defense, but it's not his pride and joy. So I don't know if the way the Vikings are operating well beyond Kirk, I don't know that it works.
Yeah.
Like-
The other thing too is
Not bad, but
if you're going to have a head coach that really only wants to focus all in on one side of the ball and then like sort of delegate the other part out, wouldn't you rather have it be flip-flopped?
yeah.
Like ideally I want someone who's immersed in both sides of the ball, but like if I'm only going to get one, hey, listen, I'm going to immerse myself in this side of the ball and then I'm going to hire a coordinator I'm going to outsource that. I'd rather it be flip-flopped.
Actually, you know what? 3 things, okay? Head coach. What's your specialty? And if it is truly offense and quarterbacks, great. In 2020, my second thing is actually the clock. Do you know what you're doing in game? In game.
Yeah.
Can you run the clock? Can you make quick decisions? Can you think clearly without slamming your stupid headset and your clipboard?
Can you plan ahead?
And my third thing is, who are you going to hire as your defensive coordinator? Because if that person's good, I don't need you to be immersed in defense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, imagine in any other business, like, so the most important thing to develop in the football business is your quarterback and your passing game.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And imagine, I feel like Mike Zimmer's conversations, and we're not in the room for all these, but it feels like Mike Zimmer's conversations with his quarterbacks over the years have been, hey, don't make mistakes. Just don't throw interceptions. Don't wreck the game for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go over to like the conversations that Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury are probably having about the quarterback spot. Do you think that Cliff Kingsbury is going in and say, hey, Kyler, no mistakes today? All right. No, I mean, they're probably having like calculus level discussions every single day about that position.
Yes, sir.
I don't think Mike
Correct.
is like texting calculus things to Kirk at night about, all right, here's how we can do this. Now, Gary might be, but he's not the head coach.
And Zimmer would imagine Mike with the Rams. Jared Goff would be destroyed by now.
Mm-hmm.
McVay is like doing everything he can, right? All right, I'll tell you this. I'll do that. And I think he gets rightfully so frustrated, but I also think he's trying really hard. Like, if you put Goff here or with the Jets right now, he's ruined.
Mm-hmm.
He's done probably.
Yeah.
And you can't have that. But I just, the in-game stuff with both Mike and with Fleck, like we see this use of timeouts that make no sense and like panicked in-game moves. That's important. Like that can't get screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
That can lose you games very easily.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree. So send us your thoughts. Tweet us at Phil Mackey, at Jay Zulgad, at Dex's tweets. You can hit us up in the comment section on YouTube too, youtube.com/Purple Daily Podcast. Click subscribe if you want daily Vikings videos into your feed. And let us know, do you think the Vikings can win a Super Bowl in the next 2 to 3 years on the path they're currently on with Kirk Cousins as the quarterback, Mike Zimmer as the coach, et cetera, et cetera? And it's not, can they be competitive? Can they be good? Can they win a division? Can they win a Super Bowl?
And who needs to go if your answer is no?
There's going to be a lot of fun discussions to be had whenever this thing is over. January, February. A lot of juicy discussions.
Well, and especially when the defensive end comes in and says, I want to be paid like number 8.
Yeah. Yep. Buckle up.
That's going to be a fun conversation at TCO Performance Center, baby.
Yep. That's Judd. I'm Phil. Declan producing behind the scenes. And this has been a State of Kirk Cousins episode of Purple Daily. We'll see you guys.